Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Policy, which is about guidelines or commitment to a plan, makes meaning only when concrete steps of implementation are taken to achieve outlined policy goals. They inaugurated the inaugural speech of the President of the Republic on November 6, 2025, was a policy speech, a State of the Nation speech par excellence. That speech and other national development orientation plans will be our inspiration on today's edition on Press R, on the theme, which policy choices will make Cameroon better in 2016. This is Press R, and I am Kilian Dandifon in Yaoundé. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to introduce our panelists. We're going to start with the lady first. Ladies first. Tabe Enanchong is a senior journalist in CRTV, and I think that when you follow her, you know she doesn't want to say it, but she is a defender of women's rights. You're welcome to Press R.
Thank you so much, Kilian, for having me. Thank you.
Yes, and then let me go to Professor Elvis Ngole. He has so many portfolios, but today we're taking him on Press R as a political scientist.
Thank you.
Welcome, Prof.
Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure to be on this very prestigious program with these eminent personalities, one of whom you've just introduced.
Yes, our able colleague, Tabe Enanchong. Yes. And permit me to introduce Barrister Mudem Fombat, who is a barrister at law. He is a solicitor. You're welcome, Barrister.
Thank you, Kilian. Good morning. Happy New Year to you and the co-panelists, and Happy New Year to the tens of millions of CRTV Press Hour televiewers.
Thank you so much, and we move over to the extreme left of the set to introduce Henry Kwam. He is an economist. He has been to Press Hour once, and his ideas attracted us to invite him again. You're welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you very much for the invite, Kilian. It's always a pleasure, and Merry Christmas to all of our viewers, and I look forward to an interesting conversation as usual.
The conversation, I bet you will be interesting, Henry. And ladies and gentlemen, you can see I have invited a legal expert, I've invited a political scientist, I've invited an economist, and I'm invited a lady, an able lady, who are going to look at those policy choices that could make Cameroon a better place in 2026 and beyond. And now we are going to revisit what the newspapers talked about during the week. We should inform you, ladies and gentlemen, that most of the English language newspapers are on recess, but there are a few of them that publish this week. And one big event that made news during the week was the joint plan by the National Anti-Corruption Commission, the Bar Council, and some civil society actors to fight corruption in Cameroon. About this story, the Post newspaper writes, Bâtonnier Mba Eric Mba talks tough on corruption, promising that his association will engage in name-calling, shaming of corrupt persons. The Median newspaper simply describes the National Anti-Corruption Commission and the Bar Council as partners to fight corruption. To the Median, speculation and anxiety about a cabinet reshuffle following the October 12, 2025 presidential election doesn't move the President of the Republic a bit, as the paper writes. Renewal of government, Biya is the sole master of the clock. While Cameroon Tribune talks about fiscal reforms discussed in the December cabinet meeting at the Star Building, about 52 billion CFA francs to be mobilized in CDC processing unit in the Horizon newspaper. The Guardian Post says with such funds, CDC will not only be revived, but will also equally be modernized. Victims of disasters don't need planning. They need rescue and assistance. This is a concept well understood and put into practice by Professor Nalova Lyonga on its front page of Monday's edition. The Horizon newspaper writes, Nalova Lyonga donates 10 million to victims of Likumba fuel tanker explosion. The Guardian Post angles the offer of the 10 billion by the head of the CPDM, Central Committee Delegation for FACO, as a saving gesture from a caring mother in time of need. And now the insider got the sweet smell of Christmas, which the paper pinned down to generosity, family cheers, and celebration of the feast of Nativity. In the running story of the week, Cameroon Insider, the beginning of Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco as a sizzling start, with Cameroon joining the fray. And that was last Wednesday. We should remind you what the papers have not talked about yet. They are certainly going to talk about that today in all aspects of life, is that Cameroon is playing its second day game today against Cote d'Ivoire. Pressa is announcing that, and the newspapers are obviously going to take the relay. That is what we gathered from the few newspapers that published during the week. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to come back to the set to go straight to our discussion. Or should I ask any of you to talk about something that came up in the newspapers?
Oh, yes, there's plenty.
Yeah, just pick two.
A lot. Kilian, when I look at the CDC story, I've had the possibility of going through all the different hamlets of the CDC, from Mondoni to Bamuso to Bekora, to all, and I saw the huge investment that the CDC had then. Lodging facilities, social amenities, and what those facilities have become today. I think this investment that is being done on the CDC today is going to bring a lot of light. CDC, after the government, seems to be the highest employer.
Yes.
When you see the number of Cameroonians that depend on the CDC and what has become of them in these past years, then you see that this investment is worthwhile. I hope it's going to happen and happen fast, so that it brings a breather to the different families and the workers. There is a lot that is going on down there at the CDC, and this just comes to confirm the fact that it's not just the cities, it's agriculture. We cannot be in a country that depends like 80% on agriculture. Then we have a structure like that one, which is dancing on 1 feet for many years. So this is a huge breather. So it's a good start for us in 2026.
A good start in this, and it will be 51.8 billion CFA francs. And you know, people down there know how to manage funds, and you've said that has been announced. I think that should be in place. They should push the right buttons for it to come fast. Yes, the economists obviously wants to say
I think it's important that we put some perspective into the CDC investment, right? If you look at the previous finance laws, there's always been subsidies for loss-making parastatals. Now, over 90% of parastatals in Cameroon are loss-making. That's not normal, and we've been allowing the situation to continue for over 5 years. So if 17% of the Cameroonian economy is driven by the agricultural sector, and you have CDC that only employs about, 120,000 people, or maybe a bit less, maybe we should find better ways to make CDC work. The investment is good, but in the past, these investments have not resulted in added productivity. The only company who left the state's control to the private sector, Suka Palm, in less than 1 year, increased production by over 61%. And now they are listed in the BV mark, and they are profit-making. So it's important for us not only to give objectives to these companies like CDC, because the government gave them objectives 3 years ago. It's about making the directors and management accountable. If 2 years from now, CDC continues to be loss-making and we cannot ramp up output by 20 to 25%, then we need to rethink about its leadership and management.
Leadership and management is, to some of us, good. The circumstances surrounding
the Anglophone crisis.
The crisis.
The Anglophone crisis
is a big problem. Because before the crisis, well, I don't know whether CDC was a loss-making cooperation.
Some parts of it had completely disappeared before the crisis came.
Well, it's important to note that before the Anglophone crisis, the majority of parastatals were still loss-making. And those who weren't loss-making, they still get subsidies of about, 7 billion or so. In the last year, in the current finance law, those subsidies were reduced significantly. But it's important for us to ensure that we set the much more tough objectives so that they can actually become contributing members of society, not draining the public purse.
Yes, we will not take another subject. We'll just go around the same subject, which is important. Yes, Prof has nothing to say about that. Yes, Barrister Fombad.
Yes, I think coming still to CDC again, I will want to link it up to the fight against corruption. The bar is on a crusade to fight against corruption. And I think that if we take that fight against corruption into the circles of the CDC, I'm sure the company will start being profit-making.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is Press R, and we are broadcasting live from Studio 4 of the CRTV Production Center here at Balatu in Yaoundé. Our topic today, we are moving out of the year 2025 and gliding into the year 2026, and it's our place to ask what can make our country better. After listening to so many people, economists, political scientists, women's rights movers, and all other people in different sectors trying to fight for a better country for us, we want to look at some major policy areas where if we actually took action, Cameroon will become a better place. And that is it. Which policy choices will make Cameroon better in 2026? I am going to start with an economist. You know, we say
it's investment, also it's number.
Investment is number.
Well,
so
yes.
Let us see what, from an economic perspective, will make Cameroon better in 2026.
So I think before we list a number, so in addition to being an economist, as we all know, I founded the Cameroon Economic Policy Institute, right? So we work closely with policymakers to help shape policy outcomes and decisions. But before we give a laundry list of possible reforms, I think it's important for us to take into account for the fact that the finance law has already gone into effect, right? 8,814 billion. And, that means that there's already a roadmap for what's going to happen next year. So I think based on what has been laid out in the finance law, what I think we have to focus on in the coming year, there are certain areas that are very important for the Cameroonian economy. Agriculture. We need to boost agricultural productivity. But how do we go about doing this? Policymakers have to conduct what we call value chain analysis so that we understand how every single actor across the value chain is impacted by a specific policy or an outcome. This means rice, cassava, potatoes, cocoa, yam, beans, you name it. If we understand how every single actor, from the planters to the harvesters to the transporters to the exporters, are impacted, then we can begin to design policies that actually reach those people. Because unfortunately, the reason why since our 5-year plan, since Cameroon independence, we've not been able to lift agricultural productivity significantly is because we've been throwing money at the problem without understanding where exactly that money should be going to. So I think we have to address agricultural productivity first in 2026. That should be a priority.
Yes.
But let's start by
in that area of agriculture, I've received your colleagues, economists, to this set, who have said we need to have regional hubs, incubators for agriculture. You talked about cassava, you talked about maybe sorghum, rice. There are some areas of the country that do better in those. We should develop those areas as incubators and bring them up to the industrial level. What is your take on that?
I think that those are wonderful ideas, but that also means that we're overstating the role of the state in making that happen. It's true that in some parts of the country they're better at producing cassava because they're hot and it's good for the environment, but also for for food security. However, we have to ensure that we're pushing forth market processes that would make producers and incentivize them to produce more. For example, we can have a central buying mechanism, right? It's happened before in South Korea. They were like us, they were not producing enough rice. In less than 6 years, they went from producing less than 5% of their rice to 80%, simply because the government said, everybody produce rice and I will buy the rice. As soon as they were sure there was a buyer, in 5 years they were able to meet up with that production. So there's some areas of there's some products where maybe policymakers can play a much more active role. However, it starts first with an understanding of the value chain to understand who needs what type of help. So boosting agricultural output is the first. And secondly, we also have to ensure that our businesses are more outward facing. You know, we signed the African Continental Free Trade Area in 2018, which gives us the opportunity to sell to a 1.2 billion market across Africa. And so it means that we have to ensure that our businesses are ready, equipping them with the technical know-how on sanitary and phytosanitary standards, on import and export procedures, making sure that they understand the importance of packaging and certification of their products, so that we don't only look at the domestic market, and they also have an incentive to produce more and export to other countries.
Yes, that brings us to what we know today as import substitution
yes.
policy. How can it work? Are we just talking about it, or can it actually work? Is it working?
It's not working yet. So since we launched the import and I'm so sorry to say this, but since we launched the import substitution strategy in 2021, there is no single food category where production has increased by up to 25%. Unfortunately. And yes, we do want to prop up import substitution in Cameroon, but it's important that we do it properly. Hence why we should try to understand how all of our value chains work first. And then that way we can have better support. Because when you give seeds and wheelbarrows, it's not enough to boost production. We need to understand what the needs of the farmers are.
So tell us what the needs are, because you are an economist. How do we make it work in 2026?
So in 2026, what we have to do, like I said, conduct full value chain analysis for cassava, rice, milk, meat, you name it, to understand who are the different actors in all of these sectors first. Secondly, we have to now make sure that the policies that are intended to boost production are actually going to the people it's intended for. Example, if you import agricultural equipment, the finance law says that you don't need to pay import duties. That's a wonderful reform. But how many, over 90%, over 60% of our farmers are locked in the informal sector? How many of them actually import, agricultural equipment? So we have to make sure that the companies that import the agricultural equipment, they're reselling that at the price that is acceptable, because if they benefit from zero import duties, the role of policy is to make sure that that small farmer in Goketunja or Bafusam can actually benefit from that reform. That's how we start.
Yeah, we're going to go from one sector to another. But before we move out of this economic sector, one last question to you. A week ago, I saw a delegation from Brazil that came to Cameroon. They were received by the Prime Minister. They were received by competent ministers in charge of agriculture. They were even also received by a university in Cameroon, private university, ICT University, that intend to partner with Brazil to produce e-agriculture using robotics and how possible is e-agriculture going to work?
So vertical farming and
what does that mean by vertical farming?
So vertical farming is farming that happens in buildings, right? You can think of it as a store where you can think of it as a intensive farming that happens in closed spaces. Mm-hmm. So where you would need 2 hectares of land, you can probably do it in a house with 4 rooms, because they use light and they use the space in a very intelligent manner. That is a solution that is becoming much more accessible to some Cameroonians. Some green farming is becoming accessible to some. So there is a chance that it can help us address food security for things like tomatoes and green peppers and and cabbage. All of that could work. But unfortunately, the scale at which it's increasing isn't enough to meet local food demand. Hence why food prices and transport were the leading causes of inflation in 2025.
Okay, we're going to move on to other sectors, but
Yes,
I will
yes.
allow the three other panelists to react to what you have said.
Absolutely.
Should I begin with you, Tabi?
Actually, I agree with him totally. You know, at the time we start looking at agriculture as the solution to our economy, we did not know at what point everybody was. It is like they're asking everybody to drop what they're doing, then for everyone to get into the farms. That's not possible. We do not. I'm surprised to hear him give the figures of that we have not gone up to 15% of production since we started talking about import substitution. I was going to ask him about chicken. When we stopped the importation of chicken, and since then I haven't seen any imported chicken in the market, but we do eat
have chicken here
every day. I don't know what
Yes,
happens.
you can
to
respond to that.
Maybe.
Yes, well, I mean, to be fair, in the import substitution strategy is based on the national development strategy, right? And the plan was to make us self-sufficient for products. So since 2021, when it was launched, was still not self-sufficient. We still import meat and fish products. So it was still not self-sufficient in those products. Now, I think there was already a certain amount of production that was going on, but unfortunately, since it's been launched, it hasn't, our production for certain products, for the majority of them, I should say, hasn't gone up by over 25%. Okay. Remember that it was launched in 2021. So in the last 4 years, we've not been able to increase production of certain product categories by up to 25%.
Yes, we have, absolutely. Well, still with you. Yes, you are still on. Is it okay? We can move on.
Yeah.
Well,
yes.
So
yeah, we can move on.
To clarify for your chicken, to clarify for chicken, it's you know, people still buy chicken products imported from other countries in Cameroon.
I see it now.
So the chicken that we consume, that's not the only chicken demand. I mean, that's most of the chicken demand, but the chicken that we buy from the market isn't the only chicken we consume in Cameroon. Some people consume chicken breast, some people consume various forms of chicken, which are still imported, right? So yes, production might have increased for some food and product categories, even things like rice, right? Yes, production might have increased, but from Yagoa, we're mostly exporting it. But we don't have enough production to satisfy local demand.
Yes.
And the pace of increase has
let
been
me
very
just
slow.
ask Professor Elvis Ngolengole, who is a minister, honorable minister. Yes, I say honorary if you like, honorable. You've been minister with portfolio before. So I don't think that it will call to minister. It's an error. Yes.
I take issue with you.
Yes. Can we say that from the government bench, there is a problem with the policy that is not being applied for us to have the results in the economic sector?
Well, since you say you're talking to a political scientist, let me begin by saying that when you talk about policy, obviously you mean national policy, policy that pertains to the nation or the state itself.
Yes.
Because there are different kinds of policies, personal, private policies, and so forth. But the policies that you're referring to are policies pertaining to the state of Cameroon.
Because all other full policies follow
from
the state
there. Okay.
sets, yes.
With regard to national policies or policies that pertain to the state, it's good to state two things. One is that state policies are not just ideas, but are held by everybody. State policies are deliberate, purposeful, programmed decisions, or you use the word guidelines or instructions, or you can say actions. In political science, we say policies are made in the following logic, in the logic of system. That is to say, somebody expresses demand, or there is a need or demand, and somebody presses or lobbies or pushes that demand or whatever, and there is an institution in place put by or created by the state itself under the laws and the constitution that we refer to as the black box. They say black box because not everybody has access to that institution. And that institution is either a governmental institution or semi-governmental institution. And that network of institutions that are governmental and semi-governmental are what is referred to as a black box. And that black box role is to process all these needs and demands and so forth, which eventually will result in what you call outputs. I mean, we say outputs, but those outputs are actually what we, in common language, say policies. Policies are outputs that come out of a black box, driven by or based on the demands that have been expressed or that have presented themselves. And so policies, particularly state policies, are not made by everybody. But everybody has ideas as to what policies should be and how and in what areas. Once the policies have come out in the form of outputs or decisions or actions, they come out in different sectors, economic sectors, educational sectors, whatever sectors, political sectors, health sectors, and so forth. The policies come out. But those policies are not made by those who are outside of the institutional setting. The policies are only made within an institutional setting. The question is, which institutional setting is that? In our political system, the way our system is set up in Cameroon, we are a constitutional republic, meaning that we are a republic in which it is a constitution that is the foundation of everything. Everything flows from the constitution. And so the state policies that are out there or that are taken or made come out of the institutions that have been created by and are recognized by the constitution in order to make those policies in the different sectors. But everybody else has ideas. 30 million Cameroonians have ideas. There are so many institutes, there are so many associations, there are so many. Everybody has ideas about how things should be and how things should go. That's very good, especially in our system where there is freedom. But no matter what ideas we've got, the only authority that has the legitimacy, legality, constitutional authority to make decisions is that black box, meaning the institutions that have been created by the Constitution in order to make those policies. And once those policies have been made, of course, others can comment, others can say what they want to say, which is fine. There's an evaluation that takes place. But those policies are made only within that institutional setting by the institutions or the network of institutions created by the Constitution. In our case, the way our system works, the policies are made, as far as the state is concerned, by the government of the state, which is, in effect, I mean, generally, the government of the state is headed by the head of state, even though under our setting, there is a head of government who's the prime minister. But that prime minister is appointed by the head of state, and that head of state is elected by you and I, all of us. And it is his vision and in his program that he sold or convinced the people to buy, that enabled the people to say, you are the one. And on the basis of the program you have presented, we will follow your policies. And you mentioned the inaugural speech of the now. He did give us an idea of what the policies,
the orientation.
The orientation.
That is exactly where.
And the policies will flow from the orientation that he gave.
Now, as a political scientist, we had some of them. If I forget, you remind me, members of the panel. He talked about institutional reforms.
Yes, he did. Yes.
And many people have applauded that.
Indeed.
Because we're going to see what is put into that basket of institutional reform.
He also talked about the fight against corruption.
He talked about the fight against corruption,
infrastructure projects in roads, water, electricity.
Women and youth.
More women and youth.
Yes.
Yeah, he also talked about restarting some areas of education that were on hold.
Doctoral programs. ENS
relaunch, and all of that. As a political scientist, how should that be made to work in 2026?
Yeah, in 2026, naturally you and I, who are members of citizens of the state, we have to accompany him, we have to accompany his government by making our own modest contributions, whether we are associations, bar association or institutes or any other association of civil society as a whole. All of us have to, or individual citizens, we have to make our own contributions to make sure that in each and every one of the categories of his policy orientation that he gave us on his, during his inaugural, that each and every one of them succeeds. And it is not we who will necessarily will make the policies or take the decision. It is usually, as I said, the network of institutions.
I think it's we. When we Prof, please, when we say it's not we, that's probably why we may wait for the end of the 7-year mandate without having some of these things that, from what I know as goodwill, people will spend 1 year without even affecting one of them.
No, but when they say institutions that were locked will be reopened, is it you and I to open those institutions?
There should be someone. There is someone at the head of that institution who we have to
who would have to implement
it. And you not wait for 1 year, 2 years. That's what we are talking about.
No, you don't have to wait.
Can I just...
But you, no. You as a citizen, you don't have the power. You have the freedom.
Yes.
But you don't have the power to make it work.
So let's change that. Can I just say... Can I just say...
The authority,
the policy,
legal, constitutional
the
authority.
Policy-making process...
Freedom, I agree.
The policy-making process in Cameroon, maybe it's changed from your days. It's a lot more inclusive.
Whose days?
Maybe
it's your days.
From when you guys were agitating, right? I mean,
is my day different from yours? We are talking about Cameroon.
Okay, yes. Can I just say what I want to correct us is that the policy-making process in Cameroon is much more inclusive now than it was before. For example, the Banking Commission, this is just one example. When they enact a new law, they send out that law for comment. And citizens send in their contributions, their tweaks and whatnot, and then they include whatever they've sent with, what they find acceptable, and then the final law is published. That's just what COBAC does. With other ministries, what they do is they don't work in silos. They invite civil society, they invite representative groups, and they sit and they talk about the policies and how those policies could change. If you look at the Plan Climat du Cameroun, for example, they've separated the various functions of all ministries working in
I'm giving palpable examples. Now, this is
policy-making process is a lot more inclusive.
This is concretely.
We help shape.
Thank you.
You help it, but you do not have the power or authority to make the decision. There is an institution in place, whether it's COBAC or ministries. That is not a private affair.
It's just much more collaborative now. That's what I'm saying. People can actually lead some change if they're really
in
passionate
my experience, is that the laws that we have in this country go through our parliament, 80% are half-baked. Unfortunately, 80% of the laws that we have that go through our parliament are half-baked. Which means
pre-agreed.
Which means you don't agree with it.
Okay.
Not pre-agreed. I mean that if the laws, if they sample opinions of experts, no consultation is being done.
All right, basically. Right. Okay.
Now I will get to immediately. I ask you this question. I will get to him and see how the laws can be made better for Cameroon to work in 2026. But Prof, please. This is the question I'm still holding for you. The policy speech, the State of the Nation speech that the President made, and we have agreed, he outlined certain things that have to be done.
Yes.
In each of those areas,
there is should focus on because when you say to be done.
Yes.
We've been doing them for the last decade and they don't work. If we take...
Please, let me just ask the question.
Okay.
There is a minister, there is a director general, there is someone who should be the initiator of that decision that the head of state announced to work. That is what we are saying. We should say in this area, let's talk about PhD relaunched.
Yes.
There is the Minister of Higher Education. That should not wait for 2 years to do that. I think this is an academic year starting.
They'll probably restart it in 2026.
2026.
And also for women and youth, it's already in the finance law.
Are you getting my question?
Yes.
So we wish to hear from you.
Yes.
Those are the things we talked about. The people should go to work.
They should go to work. You and I agree, but you and I, the liberty we've got, and that's a good thing about the nature of our system, is that you and I, as individuals and as associations that we have of civil society, we have the freedom, the liberty to push and say it must work. It must work now, or you put pressure and lobby. That's fine. That's good. But you and I have to be honest and humble enough to know that we can push as much as we want, and we should. still the power and the authority to decide to make the policy.
They would have pushed anyway.
I keep pushing. We encourage you to keep pushing.
Now, let us go to the...
So the person, whether he's a minister or a director general or a parliamentarian or, I mean, whatever.
Or a senator, whoever.
Has to, or a senator, has to, is the one who has the legal, constitutional, legitimate authority for that decision or that policy to be effected. But you and I retain, because we live in that sort of setting, a political system, we retain the rights
to contribute,
to speak, to contribute,
to
like
engage,
to contribute, to mount, to
individuals,
yes, and to comment and to criticize. That's good. What sometimes creates confusion in Cameroon is that many of us, especially those of us who are just ordinary citizens and also those who are in organized civil society, we tend to confuse the fact that policy making is not the domain of you and I. Policy making is in the domain of he or she who find themselves in what is called, in political science, the black box, meaning either government or semi-governmental institution. Give it whatever title, minister, director general, Quebec, whatever.
Consultant.
Consultant. Well, the consultants, if they're private association, they don't count. They contribute, because that's all part of civil society. Consultancy, private
well, I mean,
associations,
the pay
institutes, universities, and so forth.
I will not be the one
but they don't have the authority or power to effect or make the decisions.
In this government in Cameroon,
yes,
we know, I'm not the one to name them here, there are some ministers in this particular government that if the president says it at night, in the morning they will start implementing.
Yeah, they should.
There are.
Yes, they should.
So why don't we act like some of them? Now I'm going to get to Barrister Fombat to tell us, from what we've been talking about, the reforms announced, how can we, from a legal perspective, make them work in 2026?
I think in 2026, what we need to do is to implement the laws that are available and then fight to improve the laws that I have baked. If we do that, we will move on. Yeah. I always say the presidential elections are on our back. We now have to look at each other. We have to look at each other face to face and speak the truth to get the country move forward. True. 2026, I think we should say no to impunity, which means every offender should be investigated, prosecuted, sanctioned, and the sanction made public.
Yes.
Everybody. Yes, we have people who move and brandish wealth in front of everybody and they go scot-free. Look at Article 66 of the Constitution on Declaration of Assets. This was written in 1996. Article 16 of the Constitution of 1996 says that any public official, anybody in a post of management of government funds or in a post of decision-making should declare his assets before taking office and declare his property after leaving office.
That has never been done.
This article will not go away. Article 66 sub 2 says that a text of application shall come later on to put in the practical modality of declaration of assets. Now we have to hold on for the text of application to come. In 2006, 10 years after, there's law number 2006/003 of April 20.
So before you go to that, 2006, so it's a call that text of application of Article 66 should come up beginning 2026?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to learn. That's what I'm going to learn. Okay. So I'll just explain it, because Cameroonians keep on asking themselves. Some even say people are declaring assets, but they are not making, we don't know where they're declaring assets. So it took 10 years for the decree for the text of application to come out. That text of application came out, beautifully written law. And in section 6 of that law, it says there shall be a commission before whom the assets will be declared. Article 7 sub 2 of this text says the head of state shall appoint members of the commission that shall be in charge of declaration of assets. We're in 2025, 19 years. Next year we'll make 20 years. That commission has not been appointed.
So keep pushing.
Next, so from
Pusha,
from
you are
19
you are a legal expert.
What should we do in
You sit there.
2026?
It's only maybe on press hour that you come and talk about it. Don't you
well,
constitute?
each
Don't
time-
you constitute? We have the bar
Yes.
council.
Each
We
time
have
we
the
have-
bar assembly.
They-
How many times have you written that these are some lapses in the legal?
We have everywhere we have an opportunity. We decry this because I even ask myself a simple question: we have the anti-corruption unit CONAC. Why don't just empower CONAC to receive the declaration asset? Why do you have to wait for a commission to be appointed?
Or even
We are-
Consupe, you know?
we are
there
30
are
years.
several
We are
organizations
30 years
that
from
could do it.
1996. We are getting to 29 to
26.
30 years. The commission is not in place. So so for 2026, we are looking forward to the head of state appointing the members of the commission in conformity with the law. Let's look at unjust enrichment.
So before you get there, if the commission is put in place today, will it be retroactive in the sense that they can go back and look at what
earnings,
people have done,
past
or it will take
assets?
effect as from declaration
No,
of assets?
No, you declare your assets. When the commission goes operational, you declare assets as of that day. So those who are in office, they declare what they have as assets. And by the time they are leaving office, they will declare what they have as assets, so they will understand and see what they acquired during the tenure of office.
So those who have already say embezzle now are free.
Okay.
Okay. Well, no, not necessarily.
Look at the next point.
Not necessarily.
There is a UN convention on the fight against corruption, which Cameroon ratified in 2004. The convention went operational in 2005, which means Cameroon ratified it before even went operational, to give you the impression that there is that resolute determination to fight against corruption. If I pick just a random section 20 of the UN Constitution on the fight against corruption, it states member states who have ratified should implement laws or should put into place laws that punish punish unjust enrichment. And that article defines unjust enrichment as possession of property or wealth that is not commensurate with their legal source of income. So Cameroon ratified this law in 2004. It went operational in 2005. Up till today, we don't have that law in place. That is why you will see Cameroonians brandish property on the road and move scot-free. Because with this law,
there is a need.
The
agency in charge of financial investigation.
And if investigates illicit flow of finances, and if
So
does not
money
investigate
laundering.
possession of assets.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's really anti-money laundering enforcement.
If we have a law like that, if in 2026 we put in place a law like that, the simple fact that you have property and you cannot justify, just that fact that you own property cannot justify where the property comes from, you will serve a prison term for that, and the property will be confiscated and put in the public treasury.
Right.
Because whatever it is, it goes without saying that if you cannot justify where you've gotten it from, then
It must be
stolen
from
property.
illicit sources.
I'm going to ask you this question
Yes.
on institutional reforms.
Yeah.
The president told us that we're going to have institutional reforms.
Exactly.
We have opposition leaders who were saying, as a kind of trying to bring something new, that they were going to bring institutional reforms. The president of the republic said he himself is going to bring the institutional reforms. What, according to you, do we put into that, what he calls institutional reforms? And what institutional reforms can we have to have Cameroon better?
Institutional reforms is you and I to suggest and press forth for those reforms to be put in place. It's you and I. I mean that we have to understand that the problems of this country, we have to be part of the solution.
Yes, if you take corruption,
we should all put hands on deck.
Digitization can reduce 98% of corruption in Cameroon. We've seen it work in other countries where they've used biometrics, something as simple as biometrics, and it's reduced corruption by up to 60%.
The truth is that
so we have to digitize.
The more you reduce human contact, the more
people don't have access to cash. If people don't have access to money, there will not be corruption. So we have to make sure, just like taxes, it took us, 25 years to digitize taxes. We have to digitize taxes completely. We have to digitize the payment of any public services entirely so that individuals don't touch.
I agree with you. I worked with the Minister of Secondary Education. You don't have any monetary transactions again in the school campuses. You don't have anywhere it is electronic. And to tell you the truth, corruption at that level has been reduced.
Yes, it's reduced the incidents, even though there's still some corruption.
What people don't even see, is that those who were even in charge of tax collection in this country, because they were manipulating cash, we see them brandish ill-gotten wealth in front of us. But it is reduced drastically because all taxes are paid now online, so they don't have access to cash.
Thank you so much.
Now, you talked about the opposition. I will want to chip in something a little bit, because, like I say, everybody must put hand on deck. Every economy, every system must also have an active opposition. I think what is lacking in Cameroon is the absence of a credible opposition. I want to say that frankly, honestly speaking.
Okay.
If we have the experience of the last presidential elections, we all see that those who were the opposition parties displayed nothing but self-interest.
So can I just
nothing but
we have to allow Tabe to speak on
yes. You should stay on institutional reforms.
Institutional reforms
in the package.
Digitizing, for example, to reduce corruption.
So I was rounding up with the opposition in the sense that, like I said, every society must have a strong opposition that's a watchdog.
There are two things: strong opposition, strong civil society.
Yes.
These two,
but we also have institutions like CONAC and CONSUPI.
Yes.
We have to empower them
and now,
to be able to
let us look at some of the institutional reforms that we need to have. Then from there, please, you chip into on how institutional reforms can bring in equity, equality of gender.
Okay, institutional reform. The first thing, if we take the law on our anti-corruption unit, our anti-corruption unit should be empowered to be able to investigate and prosecute offenses instead of investigating and sending the reports, seal envelopes to the
and that's what happens with CONSUPI,
so you see,
right?
CONSUPI,
We've seen it repeatedly.
Like,
we need to empower CONSUPI to be able to prosecute.
Let's go, and then
can I just emphasize that for 1 minute? We have to empower CONSUPI not only to investigate but to prosecute. Because if CONSUPI investigated me today and I'm unhappy with the outcome, I'd write to the President of the Republic and nothing will be done. Just like CONAC can say that today 10,000 disappeared in this office, but if they don't have the power to prosecute, if they don't have the power to prosecute,
people who
then they can't do their job.
Have been arrested, they are in prison. Don't take it as a given that if you write to him, if CONSUPI.
No, it's just an example because
reforms. Yes. Practical reform. What do we have to reform?
I think that we cannot talk about reform without talking about reforms with regards to our electoral system.
Yes.
Our electoral system needs a lot of reform. I think our electoral code needs a complete overhaul. When I look at the electoral code, I look at section 26 of the electoral code that gives the director of election to conceive election material. And from the experience we had, we're looking at that, the report sheets, what we call PV. It is conceived by the ELECAM, conceived in a manner. A document that has 8 pages, those who sign, they sign on 1 page, leaving it possible for a middle page to be changed, and you don't have any possibility to contest. I mean, I think that is even criminal. That is criminal. And when I say criminal, I want to look at the penal code.
Now, what you are saying is that where everybody can sign is in the polling office. After that, you have different commissions, divisional.
That's not where the problem is. You have a document of 8 pages.
Yes.
They give possibility for all the members to sign on 1 page.
Yes.
The first page. Then there are the middle sheet that carries results that does not
nobody
bear signatures.
signs.
I mean, there is no jurist that will drop a contract where you don't visit on all the pages. You don't. Not at all.
It's unacceptable.
And then you see section 122 of the penal code punishes anybody who orchestrates acts of electoral fraud, anybody who in any participates to alter results of elections. But when you go to Article 6 on the law, on the electoral code, it says no member of the Cameroon Electoral Board shall be prosecuted during his tenure of office. That particular article
which absolves them of any
members of
accountability and
the leeway to go carry out any
offense
and go scot-free.
Yeah.
Now,
those are the things. I'm asking myself, what is the purpose of that immunity? Making people unaccountable for what they do. If it is not just an intention to, stay in power, to conserve power.
Now let us stay with the electoral code,
Yes,
and look at gender parity, gender representation.
Yeah.
We cannot start talking without coming to you, Tabi.
No, Killian, the issue is over the years we have not been able to produce a gender-specific data for Cameroon to say that there are 10 men and 15 women, there are 10 men who are this, 15 women who are that. That has been the most difficult thing that the Institute of Statistics has been struggling to do. As a matter of fact, many of the actors who are involved in national development cannot readily tell who is who in our system. That is, in this CRTV, you should be able to say that there are 100 people. There are 15 men and 20 women. And amongst the women, there are 10 technicians, there are 2 journalists, and so on and so forth. Most of our institutions, we do not have that data that exists anywhere.
But generally speaking, in Cameroon, we know that we have 52.3 women.
Globalizing it like that does not solve the problem. We need national statistics, because when you're talking about parity, it is against something. When you're talking about the number of women, it is against the number of men. So if you do not have those statistics, it will be difficult to just conclude that 30% of women in Cameroon are employed, or 50 are jobless, and so on and so forth. So that is the first problem that we need to solve. We must come out with statistics, gender.
We must collect better data, and we must mandate institutions to collect that data. No ministry should be operating out here not telling us how many women are technicians, how many women are in management, how many women are in...
And on their own. Because one of the issues that Barrister mentioned is that I discovered that most of us are operating in solo. When we look at all what we are saying, there is a line that joins everything that we need to do in this country. We are operating in solo. So you don't leave women's issues to the Ministry of Women's Empowerment and the Family.
No, but it shouldn't be. Yes.
National
No, just hold on. Let her finish.
National issues. So the first thing I said is that data that we need to collect. We need to know how many men and how many women are in this country. We need to know how many women are of a certain level and how many men are of a certain level. We need to know what the law says. Our constitution in Article 18 mandates the state to eliminate all forms of discrimination. But just as Barrister said, all those laws are there, but they are not implemented. Even when we look at the Civil Status Registry Ordinance of 1981, everything is clear on what needs to be done for the women, but it is not respected. We look even at the Land Tenure Ordinance of 1974, everything is clear on how to protect women and make sure that the women's rights are respected. But when we come and look at the challenges, we see that the gap is still very wide. Why is it that at the beginning of an academic year, the gap is this close amongst boys and girls, but as they grow, they go up, you see that the gap keeps increasing? Where are the girls? Where do they go to?
Now in tell us, you are a mother and you are a lady. Where do they go?
In a country where we have the first woman who had her degree, had it in the 50s. We know of Gwendolyn Burnley, is the first woman who had the first degree in this country. Or we had the first female medical doctor 2 years after independence. So the issue of are the women available is not an issue for Cameroon, because we do have them. We do have them in every department. We have them competent, educated, and everywhere. But why is it that our system does not trust women?
No, that is exactly the question I'm asking. Please, Henry, this is the question I'm asking. Now, if you have them, and we are talking about institutional reforms, I expected to hear from all of you, not only from Tabi, that we should go to Parliament, change that electoral law, and give a quota to women.
I was coming there. We do not have. We signed all the protocols, right? But there is no mandatory quota that the state has established for any call or for any system. That for this particular system, in the domain of teachers, we want 100 women.
We want gender parity 50-50.
We want gender parity 50-50. There is no quota.
Energy, we want 30%.
The government is hiding behind the laws that are made maybe by ELECA. When you look at the electoral code, they will say that, okay, each party should have 31% of women and so on and so forth. But it is not enough. After that, we should be able to state the quotas that, okay, if we have the military and women need to get into the military, this is the quota we want for women. And this is the quota for men. If it is in medicine, we should say the same thing. The moment we don't have those clear quotas, we'll be generalizing and saying that, okay, the law has said it. Of course, the law has said it, because the international conventions are obliging us to sign those treaties. But now when we come back home, we have other things that hold us down.
We
should
don't
not
want
forget.
those things to
Can
hold
I-
you.
can I
We,
No,
we-
no,
we-
of course,
we-
it is not
we
our
want the
making.
law.
It
We
is
want
not
the law
our
to back
making.
you up. And
It
this
is not the
this
making
is
of
from
Cameroonians.
your contribution.
Can we just
This is what I
suggest-
gather. Yes, Prof. I give you the floor. This is what I gather, Henry. In the electoral code,
Yes.
it should be stated that from a list, because the elections we are waiting for, municipal and legislative, we have a list system, that on a list of 7 candidates, substantive candidates, not alternate, at least 3 women should be on the substantive list. At least, because women should also in some lists be 4 and men 3.
And why not
If
the
we
other way
did that,
I do agree.
the
That's
law
a
will
practical
cover
reform.
this one they just
Killian,
generally talk about.
I think if we want to address
gender
gender equality in
consideration.
Cameroon,
Yes.
we should go head on. Like my Benon Chong noted, the constitution is clear that men and women are equal, but unfortunately there are a range of other laws that discriminate against women. If you look at the civil code, men continue to administer the assets of the household, even if the woman bought the assets of the household. So we need to start changing those laws first, so that women are able to own properly. Secondly, if you just give me 30 seconds.
Yes,
Secondly, we have to ensure that women can exercise their property rights across the national territory, because some women are prevented from exercising that right because they're in rural areas and customary law still
Customary
applies,
laws, that's to hold
which
them
means
down.
that we have to ensure that the national law says women and men can own land across the national territory in Cameroon everywhere,
And
regardless
they should
of customary
ensure that
law.
our customary,
Okay.
regardless of customary law.
Let's give.
Can I just suggest a
no
third
law.
solution?
Please, let's give. We'll come back to you.
No, I just want, I'm not suggesting.
Yes, Prof.
Let it be.
Can I just suggest?
Yes, you suggest we'll come back to you.
Don't create a monopoly. We're here to
Yes,
interact.
Yeah.
When the head of state referred to reforms, he meant reforms. I mean, if you read the phrase in his speech, said with regard to the state, the functioning of the state, the organization of the state. So these reforms have to do with the way the state is organized and the way it functions based on
The way it is structured too.
The way it's structured, thank you. All right. The way it's structured and the way it functions based on these structures. That means these reforms can take any form. They can be political reforms, and these political reforms can be anything. They can be institutional reform in terms of the various institutions of the state. That can go towards
Surely they have to be legal if we're
women's laws,
talking
any
about the
kind of
constitution,
institutions,
right?
and these reforms can take 2 forms under our constitutional setup. They can either be decrees by or arrêtés, if you want, by or executive ordinances, if you want, by the head of state, because he is the one who has executive constitutional authority, or they can take the form of bills sent to the parliament
And voted
for
by
parliament and voted by the parliament.
just
it
as
can,
they did
it
with the
can take any of
finance
these
law
two.
and
And so
women and youth
it's open. It's open. We don't know yet what exactly the content of these reforms will be, but we know that the reforms will be either reforms of certain institutions, no matter what, in different sectors, or they can be political reforms with regard to the way that our state is structured, as you say. But you know that they can only
in
be
this
in 2 ways.
context, they have to
There
be
will either
legal
decrees,
reforms. We
or
cannot
there will
talk-
be bills adopted
afraid-
in
Now,
parliament.
what
I'm afraid we cannot talk about the Constitution without
the
talking
time check,
about
I'm reminded that
laws as legal reforms.
I'm reminded that we have exhausted our time on Press Hour today. I'm really very happy with the way your contributions came up to allow us to know exactly. Those are just some of the policy choices that on Press Hour today we thought that could make Cameroon better in 2026. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. I want to thank you also for coming. Next Sunday is another day. It will be in the new year, 2026. Have a blessed time.